Today, I am going to show you step by step on how to lay out a common rafter. Now, for those that are in 145, you may not have seen me before. I'm Tim. I'm the senior lab tech. I work out here in the lab constantly, but I am going to, like I said, make an attempt to show you step by step how to lay out a common rafter. Now, we're going to be using the Carpentry Fundamentals. Now, you may have this book or you may have the new upcoming book. It really doesn't matter. It's still going to have rafter making in there. Now, in our section, it's roof framing. All right? Now, I understand that they write a lot of stuff in here, and most people just can't comprehend what they're trying to bring across. So, what we're going to do is, I've taken what is in that chapter, and you need to read the chapter, because if we are not speaking on the same terms, you're going to have a problem. All right? So, after reading the chapter, doing the homework like you should, and watching this video, you're going to come out in this lab and you're going to lay out a 2x6 by 8 foot piece of number 2 common wood that's going to be used as a common rafter in a project that we have set up outside. This work that I'm doing right here can be done inside the lab, all right? Unless the lab is just too packed, and then you're going to have to go outside. But we always want to think about safety here, all right? Be sure you have your safety glasses. You hopefully have read the lab, all right? And this lab goes into detail of what I'm about to tell you. So all you have to do is follow this, understand what I'm trying to explain to you, and you should not have an issue with laying out a common rafter. Now, a common rafter is just one basic element to a roof. Most of your rafter sections now are all come manufactured. But if you're making a shed or something like this, or if you have to put in a gable roof or accent something, you're going to need to know how to use these tools and lay out, may it be a hip or a valley or a common rafter. Because not everything is going to come pre-made. You may have to, especially on customized homes, you're going to have to make that on site. So, when you go out looking for a career field, there is math in here, and all that stuff that you've been studying in other math classes is all going to come down to this right now. All right? Now we can kick into the operation of laying this board out. Now, the next thing you're going to do is, when you have all this set up and you're ready to go, you're going to ask one of the instructors or myself for a laptop. All right, or an iPad, all right? Just depends on what's going around at the time. That iPad or laptop or whatever we have available is going to show you a calculator. Now, the book talks about different combinations of measurements. We're in the age of technology. What I want you to understand is, you can figure out where it's at on a computer, but you still need to know the basic understanding of this, because you're not going to be up on top of a roof dealing with rafter calculations and stuff like this. It's all going to be computed for you unless you're doing a home improvement project. All right? So what we're going to do is we're going to go and I'm going to show you the laptop, the iPad, and show you how to get into that, because now you're going to take that to your workstation. Now be sure that you take care of it, all right? You know, accidents happen, but You better sacrifice the body when you're going down after it. All right? So, this kit will come as this little apple. All right? You'll sign it out, or the instructor or myself will give it to you, but we prefer that you sign it out. All right? It should be charged. The first thing you're going to do is pop this up, and you're going to bring up the arm so it's in a upward position. Oops, excuse me. All right. Now, this, it's going to turn on. If it doesn't, you can always hit the side button and it'll come on. This password is coming up. On all our computers that are out here in the lab, the number is 2222. All right? Now your task is to memorize that. Okay. So, then you're going to come up with the basic screen. Now, we are working with the calculator. All right? And that Rafter calculator, you'll just have to scan it because it may come up in different areas. But you'll see it right here. Just touch it. Prove me wrong. Okay. Now we have a calculator page. Now, we're going to explain two things. I know people are going to say, what's slope and what's pitch? And I don't understand either one of them. Well, in your book, it explains it very well as long as you understand mathematics. Now, if you see this, where it's located up on the board, all right, I put up here slope and I put up here pitch. Now, I'm basically going to repeat what the book has, but I'm going to try to explain it to you. On your blueprints, you're going to probably see slope. And they're going to tell you, hey, I want a 412 or a 312 or a 612 slope. What that means is that for every foot of your run on your rafter, it's going to go up 4 inches. Now, you can, try to do this mathematically. I don't know why you would want to do this, but if you get bored, and the board is, let's say 10 feet, oops, 10 feet, what that's saying to me is every foot of this board, it's going to rise 4 inches. All right? So, therefore, if I have 10 feet, if I have 10 foot board, it's going to rise 40 inches. All right? So what you really have now is that going up. All right? And that's what it's trying to explain to you. That's slope. Pitch is always going to be a ratio factor in this, all right? In this case, our slope is 412. Our pitch is 1/3. Now, if you look at this mathematically, all it's doing, and like any other ratio factor, you're taking this 4 and dividing it into the 12, which gives us 1/3 pitch. Out on the field, they're going to cross-reference this all the time. Hopefully, they all stay on one sheet of music, but they may not. So don't get worked up if somebody says, well, you're talking to them and you're explaining it's a 412 slope, and they're going, yeah, I like that 1/3 pitch. It's the same thing, folks. Don't lose sleep over this, all right? But you need to understand what they're talking about there, all right? If it is, example, 612, Slope, well, what goes into that? Well, you can have 1/2, and that will become our pitch. All right? 6/12 is our slope. I hope you understand what I'm trying to get to. All right? It isn't that difficult, but until you use it enough, it will become tricky for you. So you got to stop and think before you go react. All right? Now you should have a screen like this. Now, if you're having problems reading it, you can just take your fingers and expand it, and that's what we'll do for purposes of working with it. Now, you'll see that there is a scale over on this side that says pitch, rise, run, inches. Forget that. All right? Remember I told you earlier, they interchange this all the time. Pitch, slope, pitch, slope. So remember, slope and pitch. Pitch is the ratio number, as slope is the number of inches per run as the rise goes. All right, so we have a 12-foot wall distance that we are dealing with on this situation. Now this is from the outside to outside of the exterior wall. That's important because otherwise you're going to come up short on your rafter. So when you go and take your finger and just hit where it says roof width, we're putting in, you got to hit the numbers, and then you're going to put 12 feet in there. Then you're going to move over to where it says the ridge width. You notice it's in inches. We're using a 2x6 in the classroom. This will vary depending on what you're working with, 2x4, 2x8, 2x12, whatever. So we want to put in the numbers again. Now in this, it's in inches, so it's 1.5 inches. Then we come over here to the overhang. The overhang in our case, we told you is 12 inches. So you come back to the numbers, put 12 inches in. Now you're going to come over here to the pitch. The pitch for us is a 4/12 slope or pitch. Remember, this is where it gets a little confusing. Don't ask me, I didn't write this program. But we're using a 4/12 slope or pitch. So put in 4, and then using your finger, hit the calculator. Now, the calculator is going to show you the overall rafter length. The overall rafter length is, of course, with the overhang. Right at the present moment, we're not concerned about that because it doesn't take a mental giant to add 12 inches. But there's a trick to this. If you look at the ridge to wall length, that's the number you're going to deal with. Remember, 6 feet, 3 1/8 inch, because that's going to be very vital and very important to you. So, be aware of that. Write these numbers down so that you have them. Since I'm getting a little old, we'll say 12 feet is our roof width. 1.5 is my ridge width. 12 inches is the overhang. And we got a 4/12 pitch slope. All right? Which comes out to be 6 foot, 3 1/8 inch. All right? So now I'm done with this. I can close it. And for safety reasons, you don't have to turn it off because you may need to come back to it, but at least pick it up, re-secure it, and put it back in its bracket. and put it in a safe place where it isn't going to come falling down on you. All right? Where somebody isn't going to accidentally bump it. So we have our numbers. We understand that if you look and understand this situation, and maybe I can draw this a little bit better for you. Okay, so now I'm going to show you a blown up version. We're talking about our 2x6 ridge board, and we're talking about our stud wall. We've already understood we're going to the outside of that stud wall. So understand that part of your mission in this operation is you're going to build a bird's mouth with this. So this is what it's going to basically look like at the end. All right, and I'll just add our overhang. All right, so everybody's on the same sheet of music. Now, several things you need to understand about this, and you are responsible as the carpenter to remember this. This distance right here can never be less than 1/3 the thickness of this board. All right, so you can't have, 2 inches here and you done cut away 4 inches. Not good, because of course it defeats the purpose of the strength of the 2x4 and everything else. So that's just a rule of thumb. All right, just a rule of thumb that the cut is never more than 1/3 of the board. All right, whatever your bird's mouth measurement, and we'll get into that later, can't be more than 1/3 the full length of that, or the full width of that board. So knowing that, this is what you're really doing. All right, the board tells us all our measurements here, 12 foot, 1.5, 12-inch overhang, and a 412 pitch slope, tells us this. We're going to take those numbers and we're going to start laying this out step by step. Now, this may look awkward to you at the moment, but trust me, when we're all done, you'll hopefully fully understand it. Again, students spend a lot of time coming out here and trying to get over on us. And you can talk, we have to talk the same trade here. And if you come out after reading this and doing the homework and watching the video and we're still not talking the same verbiage, you need to go back and review that, all right? Because we have to talk inches and inches, feet and feet. If you're talking apples and I'm talking oranges, we got two conversations going on here. So now we're going to have a close-up of how to go about doing this on that board that you received earlier. What I'm going to show you right now is how to lay out your common rafter for your project. Now remember, when you take a board, these boards can go from 8 feet to 16 feet in special order boards. But we're only using a 2x6, 8 foot long, and hopefully it's as straight as possible. But remember, you need to understand the parts of a board, all right? Of course, the whole length of the board. Then you have your two faces, this face and this face. One way of checking to see if your board is straight is or not straight, but not curved on your face, is to look down the front end of it there, all the way down. Now, no board is going to be perfect, all right, unless you pay big bucks. And trust me, we're not paying big bucks, all right? Now, we want to turn it to the side or on its edge, and we look down the center and see if there's any any rise and fall of the lumber, because that's important. That is going to be, if it goes up and then back down, that becomes your crown. So for simplicity, you know, we don't this is a pretty good board, but I'm going to use this as my crown. So what I want you to do is write crown on there. All right? So once we do that, then we can come up, lay our board down on its face. Now you see that there's a little wobble in here, but you're always going to have wobbles. All right? And you can always take that warp out as you're building your roof, but we'll show you that at a later date. What you need to have is, and these can all be found in the tool crib, your regular claw hammer, framing square, or as most people call it now, is a speed square, cutting tool, tape measure, and a pencil. And you lose them sometimes. A 4-penny nail. Now those are located over by the transformer. All you have to do is ask somebody and we'll show you where that's at. All right, now what we're going to do is, with a new board, you want to check to be sure there's no big splits in that wood, because as soon as you nail it, it's going to fall apart. You would go down to where the last part of that split is, mark it, and then whack that off. That's why you always buy the boards about 2 feet longer than what you're going to use, because lumber today isn't what it used to be. So once I have eliminated my bad wood, for training purposes in the classroom, we're just going to go in about 1 inch or so. Don't worry about measuring it, just follow along with this. All right, now this being my straight edge of my speed square, and I know that this is my pivot point up here. I have the 6-inch ruler, and then if you notice down on the bottom, as it shows in your homework or your lab exercise, the degrees, and then if you're doing a common rafter, the pitches, and top cuts or hip and valley rafters, you would use this scale. For this training purposes, we're going to use the common rafter scale. And remember, our pitch is a 4/12 pitch, meaning that we're going to locate number 4, because for every foot of run, there is 4 inches of rise. A foot of run, 4 inches of rise. So, knowing that, I'm going to come in about 1 inch, just kind of mark it. All right? Now, I have to put my pivot point, and some of these have a little indent, everybody makes them a little different. But that's the pivot point right there. And remember, 4/12, I come down to my scale and I read it at 4. I rotate that until the number 4 is parallel with the top of the crown, and then I go back and check to be sure that my mark or my pivot point is at the same place. Now, right there, that mark that I just made is the ridge plumb cut. All right? So, just put ridge plumb cut. What that does is that's going to help the instructor understand that you know what you're doing with this situation. Now, since I'm working by myself, and typically you will be, you have to put it back up on its edge, take your hammer and your little nail, and you're going to just tap it in right above your ridge line cut, or ridge plumb cut, excuse me, ridge plumb cut. Now you're going to take this nail out, so don't go drive it all the way home. And then release and let it go down and sit back on the table. Now you take your tape measure, and our board, when we did the calculations, came out to 6 feet, 3 1/8 inch. So therefore, from this point down to 6 feet, and unfortunately you're going to have to learn to read upside down, all right? But there's 6 feet, 6 feet 1, 6 feet 2, 6 feet 3, and then 1/8 of an inch, all right? That's where my board will end at my roof, all right? So you close the tape measure, bring down your speed square and your pencil again, and right at that point you put the pivot and you rotate it again to 4 so that it's parallel, and then double check your pivot point to be sure they're all lined up, and draw your line. Again, another plumb cut. Now we were discussing earlier that this will only bring you to your roof or to your outside of your wall of your house. Well, you normally don't leave it right there. So you have what is known as an overhang. Well, that overhang in this project is 12 inches. All right? 12-inch overhang. But now what you need to remember is you have to subtract whatever type of fascia you're going to put up against this. Now that could be 3/4 of an inch, 1/2 inch fascia, but in this case we're using 1.5 inches or another 2x6. So we subtract our 1.5 and we come up with 10.5 inches. All right? And that's our overhang. So again, take out your tape measure, you notice where I'm always working from the top? You have to do that. Don't be changing top to bottom, because you're involved in an angle situation here. Always measure at the top of the crown there. Go to 10.5 inches and mark it. Again, put your pivot point on there, rotate it to 4, because we got the 4/12 pitch, and mark it. Now, what you have to be careful about is you're going to get carried away and want to cut everything at one time. Don't. Put a mark where you want to cut, all right? We're going to cut this one. We're going to go down to the board. We are not going to cut this, but we are going to cut this, all right? The next thing that you're ready to do now is put the bird's mouth in. Now our bird's mouth, the way you figure that bird's mouth is basically by the stud wall that you have. If you have a 2x4 wall, then it's 3.5 inches. If it's a 2x6, it's 5.5 inches, all right? But always be prepared to, that isn't stuff written in concrete, because maybe the builder is using some type of lath or shingles or something, and that may change a little bit. So, but that's the rule of thumb, and that's what we're going to go by. So you come back down here to your plumb cut. So what you want to do is you want to line up the straight edge with your plumb cut, and then going perpendicular, you want to look for 3.5 inches. The 3.5 inches is there. I check it, make sure that it's right, and I draw my line across. This is going to be cut out because this is going to be the bird's mouth. All right? All right, so at this point now, we have our board laid out. We found our crown. We know what face is, what edges are. We've gone through all that. We did the calculations. Now we marked out, starting at the top, we pulled in about 1 inch. marked it, put our nail in there, ran it down, marked our plumb cut, and then our last cut at the other end, so that we're all laid out. It's very, very important that you understand the step-by-step instructions of this. You can use your notes. We have no problem with that. But you may also see this on your practical, along with the wall, so just a heads up. All right? And then you won't be able to use your notes. Now, since we have all of it laid out, be smart, take your time. You got to remove the nail because you tear up my saw, and you know, it's not going to be happy times here in Pima College. All right, now for simplicity and because of the weather and everything, we're going to just cut it inside. You're going to do yours all outside. So now we're ready to cut it. All right, you want to extend it out about a good foot. All right, you'll be on a metal table for the most part outside. And what you want to do is get yourself a C-clamp, which is in the tool crib. Secure it to your metal table. And you know, you don't have to go nuts on this thing. It isn't going to go anywhere, but just firm it up. Now, the other thing that we want to be sure of is how to operate the saw. Now, you all been through 113, hand and power tools, but we want to make sure that this is a different cut than you've been making. It's almost like a straight cut, but now you have to deal with the guard, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here. First, let's make sure it's all unplugged. Don't get in a rush. Remember, and there was two reasons for doing this. I moved in about an inch, and I'm going to show you why. You always want the weight of the tool, the most heaviest part of the tool, on your good wood. All right? So to do that, I have to go around, and I'm going to cut from here down. All right? So now what you have to do is you got to look at these little divots, all right? The divot over here is for your 45. We're not using that. The divot over here is for your straight cut. And if you notice, and you're going to have to play with this, all right? If I line that up straight on my line, I'll cut right on my line, all right? If I shift it over, I'll be on the outside. For simplicity reasons, put that point right on the line. You got to square up the tool so that you know that it's cutting on the wasted end of the board, but that will come with time. Now, I recommend that you don't use your gloves on this, but you will need your safety glasses. And remember, I was telling you about the guard. Whenever you start cutting wood at an angle, the guard has a tendency of sticking. So what I always recommend to the students is, like any other tool, move away from the wood, start your tool up, get full RPMs, then gently pull down on the safety guide, and then guide it in there and start it, all right? As you get closer, you just move the guard forward, more forward, until you cut all the way through. All right? Now I'll show you how to do that again. Okay, so I'm a right-handy. All right, I want to go and line that up. I want to check my wood and my measurements here. Back off a little bit. Get it at full RPM. I bring up my guard a little bit. and I set it down and I cut my ridge cut. The next cut is my plumb cut. Wrong. You do not cut this. All right? It'll happen. Somebody will do it. All right? So what I want to do is readjust. Now, you may or may not need to do this way when you get out on your area, just because of the type of tool, table that you might have. Now again, I'm still plugged in, and I'm ready to cut my next board. All right? I get it all lined up. Double check. Yeah. Everything seems to be good. All right? Remember, it's going to jerk a little bit. Line it up. Now we're ready to make our bird's mouth cut. Now for this, you're going to need not only the power saw, but a hand saw as well. Here's where it can get real tricky. We want to make this cut into the wood, but we don't want to go past this. So stop about a ½ an inch in. You may get even closer, and that's perfectly fine. But remember the rule of thumb. This cut can never be more than 1/3 the thickness of this, or the width of this board. All right? And of course, this is only less than 1/3 of this whole board. So it meets the code. So now, again, we line up. Now it's going to be a little bit more trickier because I've got to go at a much better angle, or much different angle. All right? So now I've got to line it up, and you're doing this all by look. All right? Start it up again. Now I got pretty close there. I know because I've done it enough times. But that's about as close as you want to get. You also notice that I stopped it while it was still inside. Do not try to pull this out. It will come back and bite you. All right? That's one cut. Now we come back over here and we do the same thing. Get everything checked out. Be sure it's all properly set up. And pull it out. Unplug your equipment just in case somebody's around that wants to play with it. Now you notice that our bird's mouth is still intact. All right? The bird's mouth is still intact. So now this is where most people use a crosscut or a combination saw to knock this out. And we'll do that next. All right, so now, again, this tool can be found in the tool crib. You want to just insert it into your cut. All right, you don't have to use a lot of pressure, but you see where the wood's starting to cut? That's almost like an inch back, all right? But it's very thin, and you just want to give it an up and down motion very gently. You don't have to beat on it. And you want to get it perpendicular, straight up and down on your cut. All right? Once you're done with that, you come back over to the other side and you'll do the same thing. What you're doing is just, you got a big saw kerf in here, and you're just taking the time to cut that out. Now, yes, can you go like this? But you don't want to do that. Just take the time and notch it out correctly. All right? A little bit more effort, but it looks more professional. Now, remember we were talking about most of these are going to be shipped to you on site as trusses. This is a great tool to know how to do, because when you start building homes and working around different angles and stuff, you're not going to get all the cuts that you need to have to be sure that the house is built. It just doesn't come that way. So they may want an overhang here, or a different situation on this room, or put a gable here. That doesn't come. So therefore, now you got to do it by hand. This is the method that you're going to use to get out there and cut your 2x6 for your rafter cut. Remember, always take care of your tools. When you're done, please blow all this stuff off with the air compressor, which is right next to you, outside. Make sure that the equipment is in working condition. Unfortunately, because there may be somebody else before you that didn't take care of it correctly. All right? Be sure that all the tools get put back where they belong so that it's ready for the next student. Now, once this is all done, you'll be directed to where an instructor can show you where you're going to put this up to check your roof. We have a pre-made assembly rack that's going to show how this is going to work. If it fits, you pass. If it doesn't, grab another board. All right? Whoever evaluates you will talk to you through it and tell you what you did wrong or whatever. But it should come out pretty close to this setup here. All right? I hope you learned something on this. We're here to help you. We're here to make sure that you got a career going forward. And this, if you know your tools and know how to use them, you're halfway there to employment. All right? I want to thank you and appreciate your time. Good luck.